The heat never really left Telverin 6. Even when the twin suns dipped beneath the rusted horizon and the violet shadows lengthened across the canyon's edge, there was always a subtle warmth crawling under your skin, like a memory you couldn't quite scratch away. The planet had been settled for mining centuries ago, until the ores dried up and the rich left faster than a gravity skimmer at auction. What was left was a husk of metal towns and sunburned settlers with dirt under their nails, and the kind of patience that only comes from giving up on better days. Quinn had long ago decided that this planet suited him. He wasn't broken, exactly, just comfortably worn, like a tool that still worked provided you hit it the right way. His mechanic shop sat half-collapsed on the edge of an old crawler road, surrounded by scrap heaps that shimmered slightly under the ozone-rich winds. He called it the Temple, mostly because his only company was a toaster with delusions of divinity. "Rejoice," the toaster declared that morning, sparks dancing from its side as it attempted, for the 6th time, to initiate a launch sequence. "For unto us a breakfast is born." "You're not a spaceship, Alphonse," Quinn muttered, pouring thick oil into the broken knee joint of a mining bot. "I am more than bread and coils. I am transcendence in stainless steel. You're not even plugged in." A loud spark. A puff of acrid smoke. The toaster fell silent. He sighed, straightened, and took a long drag from a dented can of synth coffee. The bots around him lay in various states of disrepair, some missing limbs, some entirely headless, others clearly just pretending to be broken to avoid work. He couldn't blame them. If he had a choice between laboring in the dust and faking an emotional malfunction, he'd throw a tantrum too. That's when the sky split open. It started with a sound, deep, resonant, like metal sighing under pressure. A tremor passed through the ground, shaking bolts from shelves, and knocking his coffee straight into a morning circuit board. The air shimmered overhead. And then it happened. A streak of silver light tore across the sky, followed by a pulse of ultraviolet that made Quinn's teeth itch. The object, no, the ship, was on fire. A trail of orange plasma sputtered behind it, carving a line through the upper atmosphere. He watched it fall behind the mesa, straight into the deep canyons beyond the scrapyard. He blinked once, twice, then the toaster said, "The gods have come for me, I regret nothing." Quinn didn't hesitate, mostly because hesitation might have given him time to think, and thinking was rarely his strong suit. He grabbed a toolkit, strapped on his boots, and told the toaster, "If I don't come back, clear my browser history." "Which one?" Alphonse asked. "All of them." The canyon was deeper than he remembered. By the time he reached the crash site, sweat clung to his back like a wet blanket, and his legs ached from the climb. He found the wreck half submerged in rock, its hull scorched but intact. Sleek silver, too advanced for Earth tech and humming with a slow, dying light. Quinn approached carefully. He'd heard stories, smugglers, pirates, renegade AIs, even those weird cephalopod evangelists who tried to baptize you in mucus. But as he neared the cockpit, he saw something he hadn't expected. The hatch hissed open, and she stepped out. At first, all he registered was the silhouette, tall, elegant, and covered in some kind of armor that shimmered like moonlight on oil. Then the details hit him. The long black hair cascading over her shoulders, the pale skin that glowed faintly in the darkness, and the ears, long, elegant, pointed slightly backward like wings of flesh. She looked human. Almost. She staggered, gripping the edge of the hatch. Quinn stepped forward, hands raised. "Hey, welcome to Telverin 6. Population, 1 toaster, 1 guy with a bad knee." She stared at him. Not like she didn't understand, more like she was trying to decide whether he was hallucination or local fauna. "Do you require medical assistance?" he offered. "I have, bandages and an outdated first aid manual that recommends leeches." Still silent. Then she said something. Her voice soft, melodic, with the lilt of a language not meant for human mouths. The words shimmered in the air like chimes. And then, like a glitch in translation, they snapped into English. "You are maintenance personnel." Quinn blinked. "A kind of mostly broken things, sometimes hearts, accidentally." She stepped down from the ship, her movements graceful but strained. Her armor flickered at the joints, some kind of damage. He could see a pulse of light moving beneath her skin, like veins of energy. "I'm Quinn," he said, awkwardly wiping his palm on his shirt and offering it. "I fix things." She looked at his hand like it was a weapon, then slowly extended hers. Fingers brushed. A subtle warmth passed between them. "I am Virelia, of the Ilarian Accord." He nodded like he knew what that meant. "Cool, so, crash much?" Her eyes narrowed. "My ship was ambushed. This was not intentional." "Well, you're lucky," Quinn said, guiding her gently toward a hover cart. "You crashed into the galactic center of mediocre hospitality." She cocked her head. "It means I have soup," he clarified. He didn't expect her to laugh, but she did. A quiet, unexpected sound, like glass bells falling in slow motion. That night back at the shop, she sat by the window watching the stars. Quinn patched up her suit as best he could. They said little. But in the quiet, something settled between them. Not familiarity, not trust, but possibility. He noticed how her ears twitched every time the toaster tried to sing. She noticed how he flinched whenever someone praised him. Neither said it, but both knew. This was going to get complicated, and possibly very, very weird. Virelia did not sleep in the way humans did. Instead, she entered a kind of meditative stasis, sitting perfectly still with her palms open and her eyes half-lidded, like she was politely ignoring the universe. Quinn, on the other hand, snored like an air compressor with bronchitis. The first night she stayed in his repair bay, on a patched cot surrounded by disassembled hoverskiffs and a very judgmental toaster. She remained awake the entire cycle. By morning, she had read through all 3,871 entries in his maintenance logs, analyzed his musical taste, a disturbing amount of 22nd century fusion yodel, and concluded with some certainty that Quinn was either the most unassuming genius in the sector or a very lucky man who hadn't been vaporized by his own inventions simply out of cosmic sympathy. When he woke, his hair was doing something no hair should do without atmospheric permission. He yawned, stretched, and glanced over at her with bleary eyes. "Still here." Was that in question? "Well, some people come to Telverin 6 for the atmosphere. Most leave because of the breakfast." "I stayed," she said simply. He tried not to read into that. After half-burning a pan of instant flapcakes, which she politely declined, they began the work of deciphering her ship's damage. It had survived atmospheric entry, but not without structural compromise. Its ion core was fractured, its psionic stabilizer leaking faint violet sparks like it was trying to cry aesthetically. Virelia opened a panel beneath the cockpit and hissed in her native tongue. Quinn, standing nearby with a hydro spanner and a look of well-practiced optimism, peered over her shoulder. "That's your drive coupler, isn't it?" "Yes." "It's not supposed to look like wet spaghetti, right?" "No." "Great, we're on the same page." She turned, one brow raised. "You have some understanding of quantum-capable engines." "I've seen a few, mostly exploded." One of them screamed. Still not sure how. Despite herself, she smiled. He wasn't what she'd expected from a frontier world mechanic. No scent of desperation or performative gallantry. Just a man with grease on his knuckles, a knack for fixing things that shouldn't work, and a relentless sense of humor that refused to respect interstellar royalty. "I need materials," she said. "Arcanite, phase wire, heliosilver, can you source them?" Quinn scratched his chin. "We've got an old junkyard 3 clicks out. If you don't mind digging through heaps of ancient trash with the very real risk of tetanus and existential dread, then yeah, I can get you those." They took the crawler, a wheezing, 3-legged vehicle that Quinn insisted was charmingly unpredictable. It lurched over dunes and scraped against canyon walls, spitting out insults from the dashboard's outdated voice module. "Warning, you are a terrible driver," it shouted. "Ignore it," Quinn said. "It gets mouthy when it's low on coolant." Virelia blinked. "It is sentient. Only on Tuesdays." By the time they reached the junkyard, The twin suns were baking the rusted skeletons of 1,000 forgotten machines. Towering frames leaned like decaying monuments. Metal vines curled through the ruins. Somewhere in the distance, a sandworm hooted, which Quinn assured her was normal. They're harmless unless you step on their feelings. She moved through the debris like a dancer among ghosts. Quinn, meanwhile, tripped over a pipe, cursed, and pulled a fragment of phase wire out of what used to be a vending droid. After a few hours, they had a small pile of semi-usable components and a large pile of semi-amusing injuries. As they loaded the crawler, Violia glanced at him. "Why do you live here?" He paused, resting a hand on the side of the crawler. "Easy. No wars, no expectations. No one asking me to do anything but keep the coffee flowing and the bots ambulatory." "That sounds lonely." He grinned. "Sure, but I've got my toaster. He thinks he's a god." Violia considered that. "On my world, loneliness is considered a sacred state. Our philosophers believe solitude reveals the truth of the soul." Quinn squinted at the horizon. "Mine just makes me eat too many cheese crackers and talk to old radio parts." Back at the shop, the work began in earnest. She took apart the damaged systems with surgeon-like precision. He soldered, calibrated, and occasionally made loud noises that he claimed were part of the process. Their partnership grew, not fast, not loud, but steady, like a rhythm only they could hear. That evening they sat under the awning watching the moon's rise. Quinn passed her a cup of something that vaguely resembled tea. She sniffed it, then sipped. "This is not poisonous," she observed. "I aim for mediocrity and miss by inches." She looked at him sideways. "You joke often. It's cheaper than therapy." She didn't laugh that time. Instead, she studied him, long ears twitching ever so slightly in the evening breeze. "Where I come from," she said softly, "humor is rare. Reserved for scholars and fools." He raised a brow. "Which one am I?" "You defy categorization." He tried to make a quip, but it died in his throat. A silence stretched between them, not heavy, not awkward, just quiet and full. Like a breath that hadn't yet decided whether to be held or released. Then the toaster spoke. Observation, romantic tension detected. Quinn stood so fast he knocked over the tea. "I'm turning you off for a week. To love is to evolve." "Off?" Violia's mouth twitched. She didn't laugh, but she almost did. The next few days unfolded like pages in a book neither of them had intended to write. Violia found herself waking not to alarms or duty summons, but to the scent of Quinn's ill-advised cooking experiments and the distant hum of half-repaired droids arguing about labor rights. Her ship sat nestled between scrap piles, slowly returning to operational status under their combined hands. The psionic stabilizer now pulsed with a healthier rhythm, thanks in part to a homemade coolant system Quinn cobbled together from an old beverage dispenser and several stolen parts from a retired karaoke bot. They made an odd team. She, precision and logic embodied, and he, all instinct and duct tape. She handled the high-energy circuitry and recalibrated the neural lattice while he wrangled the power converter into behaving using what he proudly referred to as motivational hammering. By the end of the third day, the ship was nearly whole again, but Violia was not. The communicator in her wrist plate flickered constantly, receiving encrypted signals from orbit. Her people were searching. She could feel them like a tide pressing against the edges of her thoughts. She should respond. She should return. She should explain to Quinn that her stay was not chance but an accident of trajectory, a delay before duty reclaimed her. Instead, she found herself watching him from across the room as he argued with a cleaning bot over who'd misplaced the power spanner. "I didn't touch it," Quinn said. "Statement." "You always say that," replied the cleaning bot, who had adopted a smug personality after its AI patch 2 weeks ago. "I'm going to turn you into a lamp." Insult recorded. She didn't want to leave, and that unsettled her more than any battle or intergalactic negotiation ever had. Later, while adjusting the telemetry array, Quinn caught her staring at him. He blinked, then grinned. "Is it my hair?" Because I know. It's got ideas of its own. Your hair defies physics, she said. You should have seen it during the rainy season. Looked like I was smuggling a cloud. She shook her head slowly, but her smile was there. Small, honest. The kind that had become harder to summon in recent years. He stood, wiped his hands on a rag, and walked over to where she was adjusting the array. So, when this thing's fixed, you heading out? That should have been a simple question. One she could answer with the confidence of a commander. I haven't decided. He raised an eyebrow. Big galaxy. Lots of people who could probably use a shiny space knight with glowing armor and tragic backstory. Stop. No, I'm serious. Do you have a catchphrase, something like "for the accord"? Or "my ears are my oath"? I will throw you off a cliff. I'm flattered. That's how I know we're bonding. Her expression twitched, somewhere between amusement and exasperation. You're unlike any human I've met. Is that a compliment or a cry for help? Unclear. A breeze swept in through the open workshop bay, carrying the dry scent of dust and static. They stood there, neither looking at the other now, and the silence settled again, thicker this time. I was born on a station orbiting Veres Prime, she said, unprompted. We are not allowed names until we earn them. Mine was given after I defeated a warlord in single combat and negotiated peace across 7 systems. That's intense. What about you? I once convinced a mining consortium to let me fix their fleet by impersonating a licensed technician. For 3 months. She turned to him. I wore a fake mustache, didn't need to, just felt right. And she laughed then, an actual sharp laugh, like something genuine had slipped past her usual armor. It hit Quinn in the chest harder than any plasma bolt could have. He wanted to say something serious, but instead he said, "Do your ears pick up satellite radio? I despise you. Only because you haven't seen my karaoke skills." The moment stretched, bent, and gently broke as the toaster spoke from across the room. Query, shall I prepare a wedding toast? No, they both shouted. That night, while Quinn dozed on a workbench with a tool still clutched in one hand, Violia stood on the roof, gazing at the stars. Her wrist plate pulsed again. A message, same signal, urgent. She opened it. VRL 17. You are ordered to return. Strategic bonding ceremony initiated. Consul THREXYL will greet you upon arrival. She stared at the words until they blurred. A bonding ceremony, of course. Her people were preparing for her return, assuming, wrongly, that she would resume her role, her obligations, her path. Her hand hovered over the reply, but she didn't send one. Instead, she looked down through the skylight at the man asleep among tools and droids and chaos. The one who made her laugh, who didn't flinch at her title or shrink from her silence. She turned off the communicator. For now. The sky changed on the 5th morning. Quinn noticed it first, somewhere between sipping lukewarm synth coffee and rescuing the toaster from an enthusiastic cleaning droid that had mistaken it for a grease trap. Hey, does the sun usually flicker like that? He asked, shielding his eyes as the upper atmosphere rippled with a faint golden shimmer, like heat waves from a starship engine. Violia looked up from the telemetry array. Her gaze narrowed. No, she tapped her wrist plate. The readings confirmed what her instincts already whispered. Someone had arrived in orbit, several someones, fleet. Quinn asked, voice light but not joking. Ilarian, 4 cruisers, 1 capital ship. He blinked. Okay, so not a neighborhood watch then. No. Quinn took another sip of coffee. Do they shoot first and talk later, or? They ask questions while shooting. The two of them stood in silence for a long moment. Behind them, the toaster declared, "AT last, MY people have come for me." Shut up, Alphonse, Quinn muttered. Violia's expression was unreadable, but the tension in her shoulders made it clear. This wasn't a random patrol. This was a retrieval mission. Formal, coordinated, strategic. The kind of mission reserved for lost dignitaries, runaway diplomats, or missing heirs. I suppose this is the part where you dramatically reveal your royal identity and return to your space throne in a beam of light, Quinn said, trying for levity, but it landed somewhere near the edges of something else. She didn't look at him when she said, "Yes, that is precisely what they expect." A shadow crossed the sun. A faint rumble rolled through the ground as something enormous entered the lower atmosphere. "Right," he said. "Do they at least call ahead?" The signal came moments later, a psychic transmission felt rather than heard. Violia flinched, then steadied herself. "Threxil," she murmured. "Consul, diplomatic enforcer, and enthusiast of unnecessary robes. You're telling me the man chasing you wears a cape." 3. "Oh good, he sounds reasonable." The sky cracked. A ship descended, not hers, not subtle. It was sleek and angular, with wings that pulsed with shifting color like living glass. It landed just beyond the canyon rim, stirring a storm of dust and electricity. "I will speak to him alone," Violia said. "Yeah, that's definitely how horror movies start." She gave him a look. "Quinn, I know, stay here. Don't antagonize the psychic death aristocrat. And if anything happens," he grinned, "I'll throw a wrench really, really hard." She stepped outside, armor activating with a low hum, every inch of her glowing faintly. The ship's ramp lowered, and from the mist stepped a figure in layered white robes that shimmered with embedded circuitry. His face was smooth and unlined, his eyes silver mirrors. No mouth, no visible ears, just an overwhelming aura of control. "VRL 17, his voice rang in her mind, crisp and cold. "You have delayed your return." "I required repairs," she replied aloud, a subtle emphasis on required. "Your absence has complicated plans. The Strategos is waiting. The bonding ceremony proceeds today." She met his gaze. "I decline." A pause long measured. "Decline is not accepted." "It is now." Behind her, Quinn peeked from behind a broken service drone. "Is that him?" He whispered to the toaster. "He looks like a shiny tree." Threxil turned, as if noticing the presence of dust for the first time. "You have bonded with a local." The voice boomed, layered in disapproval. "I have made a choice." "Impossible. Your choices are coordinated." "Calculated." "Not this one. You will leave this place." "No," she said, her voice like steel bent but not broken. "I will not." In response, Threxil raised a single hand. Quinn's nose began to bleed instantly. The ground around him trembled. The toaster caught fire. He dropped to one knee, struggling to breathe as a crushing force pressed against his chest. Violia's blade activated with a shriek of light, and in a flash she stood between Quinn and Threxil, her body braced against the invisible wave of psychic pressure. Her armor flared, shielding him, cracking under the strain. "You dare?" Threxil spat without speaking. "I choose," she snarled, and with a pulse of energy she forced his grip to shatter. Quinn gasped and coughed. "I liked this planet more before the mind-melting started." Threxil stepped back. "You would cast aside your heritage for this, man." Violia helped Quinn to his feet. Her touch was steady, warm. "He makes the stars feel less lonely." Threxil turned away. "This will not be forgiven. The Accord does not forget." Violia's voice was low. "Then let it remember me as I am." The ship lifted, vanishing into the sky without a word more. Back in the shop, the toaster said, "Well, that escalated." Quinn lay on the floor, a cold pack on his forehead, sipping soup through a straw. "You saved my life," he said, slurring slightly. "Or at least my internal organs." She sat beside him. "You once fed me noodles." That seemed fair. He looked at her, really looked. "I meant it, you know," he said. "What I asked back then. Why someone like you would want someone like me. And I told you. You said I make the stars feel less lonely." She nodded. "Still sounds like a line from a really cheesy space opera." "And yet," she said, smiling, "you're still here." 2 weeks after the sky stopped flickering, and the fleet vanished into the quiet between stars, Telverin 6 was still standing. The sun still baked the canyon walls, the wind still whispered through ancient mining scaffolds, and the toaster still tried to declare dominion over breakfast. But something had changed. Quinn had stopped referring to his shop as the place I sleep so the bots don't unionize. Now, He just called it home. He still did repairs, of course. Woke every morning to the scent of ozone and machine oil, muttering about cursed cables and why power cells always exploded when you turned your back. But now there was another presence in the shop. A second set of tools always exactly placed. Readouts organized into frighteningly efficient rows. The sound of light footsteps, and, occasionally, the faint humming of a language too ancient for human throats but oddly beautiful in the quiet. Violia had not left. Her ship sat idle beneath a tarp, technically flight-ready, but she hadn't activated the core since Threxel's retreat. She said nothing of what awaited her should she return to the Accord. She didn't have to. The silence said it all. She belonged to something bigger, something immense and ceremonial and sharp around the edges. But now, at least for a while, she'd chosen something smaller, imperfect, very noisy. Quinn adjusted to having a spacefaring alien war princess in his shop, with the grace of a man slowly realizing he lived in a romantic subplot. He stopped flinching every time she reached for a plasma blade. He started learning the difference between her expressions, when a twitch of her left ear meant confusion, and when it meant you're about to electrocute yourself again. She, in turn, learned that Earth humor was deeply illogical and often weaponized. She accidentally walked in on Quinn singing into a hydro-spanner and demanded to know if it was a cultural mating ritual. He nearly swallowed a bolt in surprise. Together, they fell into something that wasn't quite routine but felt like it could be. One evening, while recalibrating a malfunctioning atmosphere sensor, Quinn paused mid-sentence and frowned at the blinking display. Huh. Violia glanced over. Is that huh as in this can be ignored, or huh as in we are minutes from detonation? Somewhere in between, I think we've got a visitor. At first he thought it might be another Accord vessel, come to drag Violia back into duty or drop another consul with a cape addiction into their yard. But the signal was different. Sloppy, unencrypted, and very, very loud. A beat-up courier skimmer limped into the canyon like it had been duct-taped together by enthusiastic raccoons. The pilot was human, if barely, more cybernetic limbs than flesh, and a voice modulator that gave every syllable a slight honk. Delivery for Violia of the Ilarian Accord. He rasped. Quinn and Violia exchanged a look. What kind of delivery? She asked. The courier shrugged. Don't know, I don't ask questions. That's how you end up exploding in exotic ways. Inside the battered cargo container was a single item, a data crystal, wrapped in a silken cloth bearing the mark of the Accord. Violia turned it in her fingers. Her face remained still, but Quinn saw the flicker of hesitation. She activated it. A holographic image shimmered to life. A woman older, regal, with ears even longer than Violia spoke. Daughter, the Accord does not forget, but it learns. What you have done is unprecedented. The Strategos has bonded to another. The Council has voted. Your position is suspended indefinitely. She paused, then added with the faintest upward curl of her lips, do not make us regret this, and send better telemetry updates. Your last one included a recipe for midnight noodles. The projection faded. Violia stared at the empty air for a long moment. Then she exhaled slowly and sat down on the nearest crate. That's it? Quinn asked. For now. Well, that's anticlimactic. I was braced for explosions or at least an ultimatum, maybe a curse. I could fake one if you prefer. Nah, this is good, just quiet, peaceful, weird. She tilted her head. You dislike peace. No, I'm just not used to earning it. They spent the evening outside, watching meteors slice across the sky like sparks on glass. Violia lay back in the dust, unbothered by the grit, arms folded behind her head. Quinn sat beside her, then hesitated. So, now that no one's threatening to vaporize me or drag you off to be crown-bonded to a warlord, what does that mean for us? She didn't answer right away. Her long ears twitched slightly in the breeze. Then, it means I choose again, every day, and today I choose this. This being. You idiot. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because he didn't know what else to do with the feeling growing in his chest. The kind of feeling that didn't belong to people who fixed broken bots and made jokes to hide what hurt. She reached over and took his hand. He didn't say anything clever. For once, he didn't have to. Months passed. Telverin 6 became famous in obscure corners of the net for reasons no one could quite explain. Trade ships began to stop by more often. Bots ran better. People lingered. Quinn's shop gained a new name, the Accordance, mostly as a joke, but it stuck. Virelia taught repair classes to young engineers over HoloNet under the name Instructor Vale. She smiled more. She even learned how to make decent grilled cheese. The toaster eventually achieved sentience. It declared neutrality in all matters of love and burned only half the bread. And Quinn. He learned that even if you never thought yourself special, if you felt average and clumsy and forgettable, sometimes the right person saw something else. Something that didn't need armor or ceremony. Something worth choosing every day.